downloading this episode of Cork Talk with me, Tim Atkin. A weekly conversation with some of the most famous people in the world of wine. Cathy Marshall studied sport and English literature at university, but got interested in wine because of a few late nights in the bars of Stellenbosch. After a further degree at Elsenburg College, where she became one of her country's first female winemakers, she travelled the world before returning to the Cape to set up Cathy Marshall Wines. A lover of elegant reds and whites, she's a key figure in the South African New Wave. Hello, Cathy. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Tim. Lovely to hear from you.
I know where you are because I saw you a week ago. You're in the Cape, aren't you, doing vintage?
Exactly. Coming to the end of our vintage, actually. Rather a tough one, but we're through it, only just.
Yeah, a bit mixed, really. After 25 was so great, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really weird. We had a kind of a wet picking during the Pinot Noir, which was very, very difficult. And I know the guys who made Bordeaux Reds last year had the same struggle. So it's our turn this year. But I think I've managed to pull it through. Just picking became quite an integral part of decision making. And picking was the most tricky part for me because we had a lot of uneven ripening as well. So to deal with a lot of rainfall and a lot of uneven ripening. And a big crop, which was everyone's speaking about that this year.
Yeah, one of the biggest ever, people are saying.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And so quality was a bit of a, scratch the head a little bit. Are we going to be able to pull it through in terms of keeping the quality framework up? But I think we've managed to do that with winemaking skills and extractions and all of that. So I'm actually surprised and happy with the results. I'm pretty happy.
And that's where, dare I say it, where experience comes in. I mean, you and I have been doing this a long time.
Exactly. I've learned to stay calm. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, let's go back to your beginnings, because I think you were born in Kimberley, where the diamond mine is, but you were brought up in the Cape, weren't you? I mean, I just wonder, was food and wine part of your childhood?
Interesting question, and it's quite interesting to reflect on those days, because back in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, there was really not very much food and wine to speak of, Tim. Very, very boring menus at restaurants, and wines were generally, we call them Premier Grand Crus, which are like battery acid, just generally bad wine on our menus. But there was always wine in the house. So I was aware of wine as a young child and would be allowed to sip a little bit at Sunday lunch, because we had a very Calvinistic patriarchal society back then where it was a lot of control all of the time. Mm-hmm. So, yes, that was pretty much how I grew up.
And your parents weren't in the wine industry, were they?
No, there was no lovely Cape Dutch homestead with pearly gates and lovely vineyards to speak of. And I didn't really know that I would be here, Tim. It wasn't really a thing that I was thinking of back then. Sport was my love and is still my love. It's still one of my passions. I watch more of it than I do it now. But yes, that was really the thing that was in the top of my head at the time.
Because you studied physical education, didn't you, at Stellenbosch University? I mean, what were your sports? Were you a surfer? Most South African winemakers seem to like surfing. I don't, but...
I'd love to say yes, because it's quite the sexy thing to be doing. But I'm more involved with snorkeling and cold water swimming and diving. Don't dive as much as I used to, but I really love to get out there in the kelp and do that kind of thing now. So that's one of my favorite things to do. Seeing that I live next to the ocean, I need to do that.
Yeah, well, wasn't your plan to coach paraplegic athletes? That was that was a kind of career plan at one point.
It's really weird. I mean, I was going to teach sport, kids particularly, but then I kind of shifted the major into coaching paraplegic, and that's kind of where I was heading towards. But being a student at Stellenbosch University with a very nice pub just down the road called the Akker, where most of us lefties and non-academics used to hang out and try and change the world every night and drink copious amounts of really bad wine. Tassenberg, I think it was called, and because it was the cheapest, and that's what we used to do. So still not thinking about winemaking in those days, it was a really great platform to start the journey, I guess, is there.
I mean, you also studied English literature, didn't you?
I did. And Tim, that came because I fell in love with Shakespeare when I was at school, believe it or not. Most kids turn away from Shakespeare, but I had a great teacher who instilled a passion for the subject, and I still love him to this day. I think he's an immensely important writer and just an amazing playwright. I think his work's amazing.
Have you seen Hamlet, the film? Well, I haven't read the book, but have you seen the film?
Yes, I'm desperate to see Hamlet, yes, but I'm still very much involved with the classics. I love the classics.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
So you got into wine through drinking, really. I mean, the Acker. I mean, I've spent a lot of late nights in the Acker. I probably shouldn't say that on a podcast. I don't go there anymore because I'm too old. But anyway, it's kind
Likewise, yes.
It's a classic drinking den, isn't it? I mean, was there one wine that you tasted there where you just thought, oh, that's really interesting, or was it kind of quantity more than quality?
No, there was no great wine back then, Tim. That's the thing. It was really just a meeting place to go and hone the pool skills and, of course, play copious amounts of pinball in between all of the conversations we had. So I think that was my happy place. That was a place that I really, really liked to be at. So drinking wine was part of that cocoon time, I like to call it, before we kind of found ourselves in the butterfly stage of joining the whole winemaking scene. So that was really that laid the grounds for it. I can't say that there was one particular wine.
I mean, what inspired you to learn more?
I think it was when I went to work on a wine farm as a tasting host and admin, and in Stellenbosch, up Stellenbosch Kloof Road, and I spent more time in the winery than I did pouring wine for people. So then I kind of realized the bug had bitten, and I was really keen to learn more about it. So I started doing wine courses through the KWV and also later the Cape Wine Academy when it did start. But this was all pre that. There was no courses, no WeSet, none of that. It was very, very basic. So then I decided that I would need to, if I wanted to study winemaking, I would have to go somewhere. And I really didn't want to go back to university. So it was either going abroad or applying to go to Elsenburg, which I really didn't think I was going to get into because it wasn't an institution for English women. And so I applied anyway, and I got in. Surprise, surprise. So I didn't have to travel abroad to do it just yet. So I did my 3 years. I call it the Little Bo Peep diploma, to a famous Frank Zappa song. And it literally was that you put it in your sort of bottom drawer and hide away from, or hide it away. But it really did help me get into opening doors for me to go and travel abroad and make wine overseas. So that was great. I needed to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, did you need science to do it? I mean, did you had science having done physical education already or not?
Well, here's the secret I don't really tell many people, Tim. I didn't have chemistry and science at school. So that was also part of the reason why going to Stellenbosch University I wouldn't have made it. See, I'm an artist. I'm not a scientist. And I regret that to this day that I didn't study chemistry and science at school. I was more into sport and art back then. So anyway, it led me down a path, and I did the Elsenburg thing where it wasn't required to do chemistry and science, although we did do those courses very basically, very practically aligned, so that I could position myself as a winemaker. And so during the years that followed, I've since, because I was involved with the science, a chemist and a science person, he taught me a lot about it. And so I've kind of had to learn the skill that way. And now I'm engrossed in quantum physics, believe it or not. Absolutely love it. And I think it's a fascinating subject. And so I've learned a lot about science through that. Yeah.
Were there many women winemakers in the Cape in those days? I mean, I know you spent a bit of time working with Norma Ratcliffe, who was famously at Warwick. Anybody else, man? And what was it like working with Norma?
Oh, I loved working with Norma. She was tough, and I liked that about her because, and I was a little afraid of her too because she was this incredible, stellar person on the landscape during the time. But she taught me a lot about wine and how to, and I kind of mimicked her in a way. I would imagine in her resilience to manage being a woman on a landscape like this. And there were other women. Yes, there was Lynn Sheriff at the time, who was just before me, and I know that she does a lot in the UK now. not winemaking, but that was about it. I think there was Penny Verberg, studied with Niels. I know she's kind of in the background of Luddite now, and her daughter's doing amazing work. And then there was another two that studied with me, but they ended up falling out of winemaking. So, yeah, there were a few of us, but it was tough. It was tough to break into it at that stage.
What made it tough? Did people just not take women seriously as winemakers?
Well, Tim, back then it was a very patriarchal society, and I came from a very left-wing school with very left-wing ideas into a very right-wing organization that was Elsenburg at the time. I know it's changed a lot, obviously, but it was a difficult and different time for us then, and you couldn't be outspoken in that kind of environment. It was very tricky.
And it would be worse if you were a woman, if you were outspoken as well, presumably.
Was. And I made it worse for myself by not being quiet, because I have that way of speaking out.
That's why we love you. I mean, you worked at Blauklip in the state, didn't you, for a couple of years? And then you went overseas to Sonoma County to work, I think, at Ferrari Carano, Don Carano, I remember him.
Exactly.
And that kind of period, that initiated a new period in your life, really, because you started travelling. You went to Saint-Emilion, you worked at Chateau Angelus in 94, in Oregon, you went to Rex Hill in 95, and you also visited subsequently Burgundy, Australia, different trips. I just wonder what those experiences have taught you, and were they all equally valuable?
I'm scared to say equally valuable. They all brought something to the patchwork of the final quilt, I would say. But I learned something from each one of them, and I kind of sponged out of that and put that as a way that I would adopt winemaking. So I would say Ferrari Carano, which would have been my first internship outside of South Africa, was really about laboratory and about defining all the different things that make up a wine in terms of laboratory analysis. But that kind of didn't do it for me, because we didn't get to taste a lot. We were just constantly pulling samples out of barrels and putting them under spectrophotometers. And so, although it was interesting, it wasn't really how I wanted to make wine. And then moving on to Saint-Emilion and running the cellar at Chateau Franc for Hubert from Chateau Angelus. That was interesting, because then there was no laboratory equipment. It was all my own intuitive guesswork and smelling and tasting. There wasn't even a pH meter there.
Yeah.
And a very, very old Vaseline press in a cellar that was 11th century falling down. But that, for me, instilled a love of wine through using intuition and taste. There it was all about taste. So I learned a lot from there. And then hopping on to Australia, it was all about looking at vineyards. So really getting an understanding of how wine is really, really connected to how you grow vines. And I got to see a lot of different design of architecture, canopy management, all of that back in the day. And meeting Richard Smart was a real
amazing guy.
Amazing guy.
Sunlight into wine. Yeah.
Totally. So
and what about Burgundy? I mean, Burgundy must have been, you don't mention Oregon. Oregon, presumably you fell in love with Pinot Noir a bit, didn't you?
Well, I went to Oregon for Pinot Noir because I felt like I needed to immerse myself in it. Back in South Africa, we were dealing with old clone work, BK5 clone, which was planted predominantly for the production of MCC. And it is a clone that doesn't give color or too much flavor. It's really just to be picked at 19 bricks. So that didn't really work for me. So going to work with these incredible vineyards in Willamette was just an extraordinary eye-opener. And also they weren't working much with Dijon there. They were working more with the other clones, Wädenswil and Pommard. And then I got to see another style of winemaking, which was very different to what we were doing in South Africa. And then, of course, the trip to Burgundy just kind of put it all into a beautiful frame. I got to taste with the best of the best around Burgundy and met incredible people who were so religious about. There was a religiosity about what they do there. Just incredible. And it was an amazing experience because each one of the people that I met, from Dominique Lafon to the Come to the Go guys. They were incredible in how they took their winemaking so seriously. And then, of course, meeting Françoise Vienne, who was she opened my frame of mind to such an extent that I use her views and her thoughts so much about soil and how much they interplay with Pinot and how important it is to look at that.
And how did, you came back from those trips and you started Barefoot Wines. How did that come about? And just what was the inspiration for the project?
There was no thought to inspiration. It was just out of a solid party that we had down on the beach here in Elsenburg, 40 friends, revelers. And we had no idea what we were doing. We just brought a ton of grapes down from Stellenbosch and stomped them through the night and had a jolly good time and made 3 very nice barrels of Shiraz, actually, thank you very much, from a vineyard that doesn't exist anymore. So we did that, Tim, and it was great fun. And I had no idea that the business was going to come out of that. It was just a fun project.
So it was a party and you said, hey, why don't we buy some grapes and make some wine?
Yes, because Greg and Pete, who were my friends back then, they said, all right, put your money where your mouth is. You love this whole idea of garage wine. Let's do something. Let's make it into a party. So that's what we did.
And that became the garagiste movement, which I think was where I first met you, wasn't it? But literally in a garage.
That was the following year, Tim. The same two came to me and said, we think this is a fun idea. Why don't you make wine and be the winemaker and we'll make a business out of it? And I was super excited because for a woman then to have her own label and having the backing behind you, I mean, that was a dream, an absolute dream. But there was no business plan. There was no idea of where we're going. We're just going to make this happen. And remember, this is a different time as well of winemaking. So I think it was easier back then, although I say that with kind of...
Why?
Because we didn't have social media back then.
Yeah.
And there were fewer of us also doing this. So I think it made it easier. But tougher in another way, that we were forging and breaking ceilings to get the business up and running without having any money or skill in doing it. I mean, we're very blue-collar people.
Well, you had skill. You were already a trained winemaker, right?
Yeah, but still, running a business is a completely different skill than making wine for somebody else. So that's why it took a long time to actually get us up and running.
I mean, was that the start of the new wave? It was certainly part of it, wasn't it? And there's that movement that began in '94, I suppose, post-apartheid.
For sure. I think without realizing it, we definitely were the revelers that were pushing the wave. And I think the Swartland Revolution really escalated it into a whole different way. And had I known how important it would be to break that, I think we should have pushed it more, definitely, in hindsight. Yeah.
I mean, were you aware you were doing something influential, do you think?
No, not at all. No, I just did it because I loved doing it and it was a fun thing. And then we had Tanya Butler, bless her, who decided to formalize it, because if it wasn't for her, I don't think it would have been a formal thing.
Was it called the garagistes?
Yes, the garagista movement, taken from the French who drove the movement there at the time. And I think it encouraged more people to create and craft their little garage and shed wines and become a movement, which is fantastic.
How many of you were there? I mean, Clive Tour was there as well, wasn't
he? Yeah, there were about, 8 or 10 of us. I think there are now about, 20. I've got no idea. I'm
Is it still going?
Member now, so
is it still going?
Apparently, yes.
Oh, 20 of them now. Okay.
Yeah. It's great.
And what about the love affair with Pinot? Did that begin in Oregon, or were you already in love with Pinot?
It was when I was still a student and visiting Hamilton Russell. I think I bought a 1985 Pinot back then. Could have been an older, can't quite remember. But I remember it really broke my bank balance because it was seen as very expensive. But I think that really changed my life was drinking that Pinot. I don't know if Anthony knows
85. Well, he will now because we'll tell him on the podcast. I'm sure he'll be very happy.
It really moved me in a way that no other wine had. It was just a beverage, but this wine just said, hey, hang on a minute, what is this?
Yeah.
And I think that's really was something that I kept to myself as being a very important tool in the arsenal of making wine.
Yeah, and I think, Tim
Yeah.
Hamilton Russell, who was obviously Anthony's father,
Yes.
was part of the new wave too. I mean,
For
he pushed
sure.
boundaries in a very brave way
Yes.
under apartheid
Yes.
by disobeying the authorities and saying, I'm going to plant what I want to plant, and being fined. And I mean, he probably could have gone to prison. I don't know. He was
Yeah.
a comparatively important and successful businessman, but, plenty of people like that ended up in prison for disobeying, didn't they?
And that's why I loved it. I love that kind of thing. I love the mavericks of the world. You've got to support
Yeah.
that. I think it's very important. Yeah.
I agree with you. I just wondered what you know now you wish you'd known then when you made your first Pinot Noir. I think it was 1997 you made the first one, wasn't it?
Well, I think it was a case of again, not knowing what I was doing and just getting whatever grapes I could to make wine at the time. And of course, the first thing that comes to mind is site and climate, because Pinot,
Yeah.
very, very important to be in cool climate, because you want to retain that really fresh, bright precisionness of Pinot that is so important. But also 1997, there wasn't really much to work with back then. So
No.
I was really working with BK5, as I mentioned, and also in Stellenbosch, where it's not really great area for growing good Pinot. So
Elgin didn't have Pinot, Hemlinada did, but probably not very good clones, right?
Or BK5, yep.
Yeah.
And I know that the Kluber people had Pinot, but again, it was mother blocks for the KWV. So not really much available back then. And I'm just glad that I persevered, Tim, because a lot of my peers were saying to me, why are you working with this grape? It's terrible wine. Nobody wants to drink Pinot Noir. You're crazy.
Really? Wait,
Yeah.
So when was that? That was in the late 90s, yeah?
1976, 1997. I remember clearly playing a game of pool, and they would look at me and say, you're nuts. You can't sell this wine. And luckily for me, there was a great movie called Sideways, and that changed everything. That really stepped everything up and changed the perception of Pinot being quite a kind of difficult wine to drink into something that people really wanted to drink.
Yeah.
And I think that spurred the movement on. And then we started bringing in the right clones, the Dijon clones. NTAV started propagating these clones for us. And that just changed everything. So I'm very glad to have been part of the old school and then transitioning into the new. So I had a sort of a taste for both worlds, which is, I think, an important story to have.
So, it's clones, obviously, particularly these Burgundy clones that came in from Dijon, amongst other places. It's site, isn't it? I mean, because a lot of these cool climate regions just were off limits, weren't they? And certainly before 1994. I just wonder, which do you think are the regions that are best suited to Pinot now? It's not Stellenbosch, really, is it?
No, it's not Stellenbosch. I'd definitely say the two areas for me right now are Elgin, because I've been there a while. I kind of understand how to work with the Table Mountain sandstone and Hohook shales that we have predominating there. And more recently, finding areas like Himmelanaar Ridge has just really changed and ramped up for me the Pinot movement. I think it's a very important little area, is Himmelanaar Ridge.
And that's one of three sub-regions within the Hemlinada Valley, probably the youngest of the three, I think, isn't it? Yeah. I don't mean in terms of soil age, I mean in terms of plantings, yeah.
Exactly,
and
yeah.
You think the most exciting?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think it's really a very special little site, and I'm happy to be there, for sure.
Yeah, interesting. I'm also intrigued at something that you sent me, saying that a trip you'd made to Tibet and Nepal in 2013 had inspired your Pinot philosophy. I mean, that's just really interesting. What was that, sort of Buddhism, or what was it that got inside your head and heart?
It's a long story, Tim, and it starts from a young person reading Tintin in Tibet, because I was a Tintin fan. And that was the most dog-eared book that I still possess, actually. And then I went on to read 7 years in Tibet and started really being fascinated by what happened in that country. And it really parallels with our country here with the apartheid. And of course, the other story goes around the fact that when Pete was alive, John's dad and my partner, we did a lot of climbing, a lot of hiking, particularly in the Drakensberg. And his passion was mountains. So we got to do a lot of these trips with him. So when he died in 2011, I managed to put a trip together for us, for Jono and myself, to go in 2013, first of all, to honor him and to see the tallest mountain on the planet. And also because I was fascinated with the whole Tibetan story, and also wanting to understand Buddhism from a real point of view, a sort of an ancient point of view. And so what better than to go to Lhasa and walk around the Patola Palace and all of the beautiful squares where the Tibetan people still practice their faith. It was just an incredible thing. And then we drove. It took us 2 weeks to drive through the Himalayas, which have to be the most incredible, beautiful, spiritual things you'll ever encounter. And my heart still lies in the Himalayas. I think it's just an extraordinary time of my life that I had there. And then, of course, arriving at Base Camp Everest, 5,200 meters above sea level, took a lot of time to acclimatize to that height. And we stayed with an amazing in a yak tent with yak farmers, beautiful people that looked after us for a week. And of course, I chose to go in the monsoon because I didn't want to be there with all the tourists. I wanted to kind of hang out there and be alone. But of course, monsoon was there in the Himalayas. So anyway, after day 3, my driver said to me, look, I think we need to kind of start thinking about going because border securities are very tight. We need to get back. So I just said to Jono, look, let's take a bottle of Pinot that I have been carrying with me in my rucksack all this time. Let's just walk up to the base camp where the climbers used to take off, closed in 1993 because the government decided it wasn't the right thing to do. They now climb from the Nepal side. So let's go. And off we went. And it's incredible, Tim, because as we were walking up, there was this beautiful lake mirroring the mountains and the glaciers next to us. And as I looked down, I just saw this peak and I thought, that's impossible. Can't be. I was hallucinating. But the clouds parted. And as they parted, there was this mountain, the last 3,200 meters.
Wow.
And it was a very special moment. So we got to drink our 2009 Pinot Noir, by the way, which was heavenly. It was quite spectacular, out of a metal mug. So we could tip the cup to the mountain and say a little prayer and then walk back. And it was an incredible moment. And
what a great story.
And it didn't actually dawn on me till much later, about 2016, 3 years later. And I looked at Jono and I said, you know what? This was a very, very special time for us. We need to honor this in some way. So I'm going to make a wine as if we are climbers. And so we juxtaposed the story of climbing a mountain and making a Pinot every single year. Because I know climbing, you need to be really tickety-boo. And the higher you get, the more detailed and precise you need to be in order to survive. And so this, for me, was the creation of our finite elements Pinot Noir. And on the label, you'll see the map of where Jono and I sat.
So Pinot's like climbing a mountain. It inspired you in all sorts of ways. Interesting.
Exactly.
I mean,
yes.
You set up your own project in 2007. You'd worked for other people,
yes.
like particularly Ridgeback, where you did some amazing things. But what did you learn from working from other people? I mean, why did it take you so long to do your own thing? You'd done Barefoot, you'd done garages, but they were much smaller things, weren't they?
Well, I guess it's about having to find a job so I could feed myself and kind of make a living. Because our little company was still very much a weekend thing. It was very much a second job for all of us. And so by the time I got to 2007, I realized that I wasn't getting any further with what I was learning or what I was taking from this or providing back. It was just all a case of we need to shut down our day jobs and we need to focus on our business. So that's what I did. So after a year of being really, really struggling poor, 2007, with no income, we decided, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to make this thing work. And we did. We nearly shut down a few times. But we made it. And I love to say that it's taken us 20 years to kind of make it a success because that's how long it takes.
Yeah,
it's a very expensive hobby.
I mean, you don't own vineyards, do you? But you buy grapes. I just wonder, how do you find the growers? Do you find them or do they find you?
Look, the industry is I know a lot of people in the industry, and when you start tasting people's wines and you know they have grapes for sale and you appreciate their farming skills and abilities, then you go there and you have a look at the general husbandry of the vineyard, and if it looks good and you like the philosophy, then you start talking to each other. And there's some relationships that I've had for a very long time, and we're still together. And there's some new ones that I'm really excited about, some new blood that has come into the vineyards and fixed things up. And I'm still finding new sites, which I find very refreshing and very interesting. And I find that there's a style that I have that can curate these different sites that is still Cathy Marshall.
And I suppose the disadvantage is you might lose fruit, but I don't know, the vintage is struck by, I don't know, hail or frost or a biblical plague or whatever, or someone just decides not to sell the grapes anymore and to make their own wine, right?
And I've had that happen many times, but, there's many other grapes out there as well. So I've learned not to panic about that. I have panicked before, but I don't panic anymore.
I like that.
We just flow around that like water.
Yeah, I like that. Would you like to own a vineyard? I mean, if so, where? In the Cape, or would you? I mean, I'm giving you, unlimited budget. You could buy a vineyard anywhere.
I would have a vineyard in Greece for sure.
Yeah.
I just love being in Greece. I would plant some Chenin there. But yeah, I think being more serious, it would be cool climate, definitely, because that's a story we've been telling for so long, and those are the kind of wines I like to drink. I like that fresh, precise, kind of edgy wine that I like to make. Comes from cool climate.
And I like to drink, I must say. Yeah. I mean, how many different wines do you make now? Is it about 10?
I make about 9 at the moment. 9 different wines, yeah.
And I just wonder how you describe your winemaking style. It's that elegance you talked about. Is it sight expression as well?
Definitely. And even if it's in a warm site, like I get fruit from Voorpaardenburg, there's still an element of freshness and brightness that I love to execute in the wines. So again, it's all about picking dates and growing the fruit that you can pick it at that time. It's not always about getting to sugar ripeness. I've kind of let go of that a long time ago. It's about looking at how the grape is structured and how the vineyard looks and all of that. And again, bringing in intuition and just tasting the grapes, lots of them, before you make a decision.
I just wondered whether you tailor your winemaking style to different varieties and different styles.
Yes and no. I think the front of mind is about precision and freshness and brightness and clean wines. So whether it's the Semillon or the Chenin, which you can make big and round, but I prefer to keep it tight. So those are varieties that I kind of make like that. The Riesling, as we see, is very precision. And then the Pinots, because it's cool climate, again, there's an element of freshness. The Grenache even though I pick it in warmer climates, I pick some bunches that are slightly green to bring the freshness back. So it's all around bringing that fresh element into the wine, so long as it's balanced and elegant and restrained. Those are the things that I like to curate around my wine.
Are they kind of wines you want to drink in a way?
100%. And with food. Very important. Wines must work with food.
Yeah,
definitely.
No, I agree with you completely. Tell us about the labels. I mean, we can't show these on a podcast, but people can go on your website, which is it CathyMarshallWines.com?
Correct. Yes, CM Wines.
cmwines.co.za or .com?
Yep. .co.za.
I mean, amazing labels. I mean, there's almost part of your brand, I think. Who designs them? Is there one designer? Is it different designers?
Well, I have a lot to say about it, of course, but when it comes to...
That's surprising.
When it comes to actually doing the painting, the folks that I've used to paint the labels, I give them a brief and I say, this is how the wine tastes, this is what I'm looking for, this is how it must look finally, but the rest is up to you. And so that's how the labels have arrived. So there's freedom with the artist to create within a framework of what I give. And I've been surprised pretty much by all of the labels that have come my way and that I've actually loved it. And that there's been a great collaboration and understanding of what I'm trying to say in the wine. And that's
Do you give them the wine to taste before they design the label?
Definitely. Yeah. Copious bottles to taste so that they really get involved.
And do you pay them in wine or with cash?
Some of them get paid in wine, some in cash. And actually my latest one, the Peter van Straten that you saw the other day, very famous Cape Town artist back in town, And I said to him with trepidation, how much, because his paintings are very expensive, how much do you think it will cost me to have one of your paintings on one of my wines? He said, no, my friend, just share the love. Put it on the bottle. Enjoy it. So that's
Wow.
what I
If,
did.
if only all people were like that. But you're probably more likely to be like that if you're an artist, don't you think?
For sure, for sure. I've been
Yeah.
very, very lucky with the folks that have painted for me.
Yeah.
Very
I mean,
lucky.
your cellar door is amazing. I love going to your cellar door because it's full of art. You've got
Yes,
lots of
yes.
featured artists on the walls. I just wondered how important a cellar door operation is to a wine business these days. Because, I mean, you're selling quite a bit from the cellar door, literally, aren't you?
Well, Tim, this is the very first time in the 20 odd years of me having this little business that we've had a tasting room. And I realize more and more that this is the most important thing to have in a cellar. A sorting table and a cellar door, very important. Because you need you need to window dress your brand that speaks about who you are when people walk in the door.
Yeah.
And look, it might not be the poshest, the schwankiest place on the planet, but I also want people to walk in there feeling like they're at home, that they're coming to visit a friend, even if we are strangers. So my favorite strapline is never met a stranger. And that's how I want people to feel when they walk into our tasting room.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I'm very grateful to curate with a wonderful man called Johan. He's got a lovely art gallery close by to where I live. And so he brings artists to our cellar door for a month, and then we showcase their work, and hopefully we can help sell. Because I know the artists are struggling, like musicians and winemakers, the artists are struggling.
A journalist.
We need to all support one another. And what better way to have a beautiful set of artworks and wine together?
I mean, there's a lot of talk of crisis in the wine industry, obviously, and not just in South Africa. Everywhere I go, people are saying, oh, God, nobody's drinking wine anymore. Prices are too high, blah, 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 blah. How can smaller operations like yours continue to thrive? What's the key to it, do you think?
Well, I think it's because we are individual and authentic and unique. And I'm finding in a world today where everything is just so fake and so out there, that people are actually exploring new avenues of more sort of low-key, authentic, real produce. And so if you look at organic and small markets, they are thriving right now. Markets as in terms of going to a Sunday market and buying goods there rather than going to big corporate malls. And I'm finding that with wines too. So I think the smaller guys like us, we're doing okay. I wouldn't say we're doing brilliantly, but we are surviving. And I'm just very lucky that I create the wines that a lot of the international markets want to have. And I have a big range, so that kind of helps me spread the various wines over various countries.
Yeah.
So, for instance, Japan, which is one of my biggest markets, will take Chenin and Riesling and Pinot because it works very well with and the Semillon actually with their food. And you go to somewhere like the UK, the Riesling is a huge seller because it's slightly sweeter. So it really works like that. So you have to be careful about how you diversify and how you market, and be very, very aware of what people are drinking. So I think that kind of helps.
But most of all, authenticity. I mean, you talked about your son, Jono, who's a winemaker now. He's following in your footsteps, isn't he? And I think off to Spain soon. Yeah, fantastic news. I think that generation definitely values authenticity. And I think all this stuff about they're not drinking, I think they will drink and they'll certainly drink wine if they feel it's telling them something authentic. I like what you're saying there.
I think they're more interested in the stories that are being told rather than how they must be drinking and what they must be drinking. I think they've kind of lost attachment to wine, like not so much as what we were, because we were chasing medals back in the day. People aren't interested in that too much in the youth, is what I'm finding.
Yeah, I think so. And it's not just about conspicuous consumption that you want to be showing off because you're drinking the most expensive
100%.
bottle. You're actually more likely to be talking about a wine that's moved you in some way. The kind of Tibet story. I mean, that's a great story, isn't it? If you can explain that through the label.
Yeah, for sure.
The final question is how you get away from wine. I mean, are you still sporty? I mean, you still go snorkeling, don't you? And walking and a bit of running, hockey days behind you or not?
Unfortunately, I've had two big operations on my feet and my legs. I think it's probably from the gymnastics and all of that damage from those years. But I'm looking forward to getting back into it. I don't know if my hockey days will continue, but definitely the water sports, because that's good for me. And hopefully some tennis, get back into tennis.
And still reading English literature? I know you're a great reader generally, but is English literature still a big love of yours?
Absolutely. I cannot live without my books. I am surrounded by my books. I don't read as much as I used to. Art has taken over. I've started painting, and I'm enjoying that. So I'm learning about techniques of paint. And of course, the quantum physics I'm very into at the moment. So those two.
And you're kind enough to pass books on as well, because I remember years ago you gave me a book about scent, which was really interesting.
Oh, Luca Turin, one of my favorites.
Luca Turin's book, who actually ended up doing an article for my website once about botrytis. I wrote to him and said, "Can you write an article?" He said, "I'll write something about botrytis." I said, "Okay, great." So he did. So I knew about him because of you.
Yeah, he had that Swedish guy on who was very interesting.
He was good, wasn't he, about spelling. Yeah. Anyway, listen, it's been fascinating to talk to you. We could talk for hours. Sure. We will next time I see you, which I hope will be very soon in London or down in the Cape. Cathy, keep doing what you're doing. I love the styles of wine you're making. As you said, they're authentic and they're so you. And as you said, they're wines that you want to drink. It's been great talking to you. As I said, see you soon.
Thanks, Tim. It's been a real honour. Appreciate it.
Cathy is one of my favourite South African winemakers, a person with an emotional, intellectual hinterland, as well as enormous talent. I hope you enjoyed listening to her too. Next week on Cork Talk, my guest is Philippe Melka from Melka Estates in the Napa Valley. Join me then. Thanks for listening to Cork Talk. If you want to read more reports, articles and tasting notes by me, go to my website, timatkin.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, @TimAtkin, and on Instagram, @TimAtkinMW. See you next week.